Chris Paul has declined his $44 million player option. Suns fans shouldn't worry. It's expected he'll work out a new deal with Phoenix. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, in his first season with Phoenix, Paul averaged 16.4 points and almost 50% shooting, leading the Suns to the NBA Finals. Dwight Leonard has declined his $36 million player option for next season, making him a free agent, sources telling Adrian Wojnarowski. However, he's likely staying with the team. Leonard signed a 4-year deal worth just over $176 million this offseason. He's expected to miss significant time this upcoming year due to an ACL injury.
Well, the champagne isn't even dry in Milwaukee, and ready or not, NBA free agency is here. Bobby Marks, our NBA front office insider, joining us now. There's always that big domino, Bobby, that falls, and then sort of everything else falls into place after that. Who's the big domino this year, and what's the impact it's going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be Kyle Lowry. This is a point guard-driven free agent class, and Lowry kind of dictates what all the other different moves other teams are going to be able to do. And I think, for example, a team like the Miami Heat out there who would love to have Lowry. What happens if Lowry goes to the Heat? That kind of dictates a move for Lonzo Ball in New Orleans, potentially Chicago as a suitor. Spencer Dinwiddie's another name out there. Likely we'll see Chris Paul go back to Phoenix and Mike Conley, but Lowry's decision basically will open up the rest of the free agent market here because limited teams with cap space because of COVID. You're looking at teams like the Lakers and the Clippers really with limited money to go out and spend. So all eyes will be on Kyle Lowry. Once he makes that decision, the floodgates will basically open up here.
And yet Miami brought Goran Dragic back on Sunday. So what does that mean?
Yeah, so Miami had two different options to go. They could have operated as a team under the cap. Basically, they would have declined Dragic's option, $19.4 million. They did that with Andre Iguodala. And then they could maybe go out and sign Kyle Lowry outright. They would have had about $27 million. Now they are operating as a team over the cap. So you can go out and trade for Lowry in a sign-in trade, maybe attach another player. The benefit of that is now you have your $9.5 million mid-level exception. So you can get potentially a player like Lowry. You can potentially go out and use that money with another player in free agency. And you also have restricted free agent Duncan Robinson. So it just gives Miami a lot more different options that they maybe didn't have, prior to today.
For the big chips, we expect Chris Paul likely back to Phoenix, Kawhi Leonard likely to stay with the LA Clippers. The Jump will have you covered with a free agency special Monday, 3 Eastern on ESPN. Bobby Marks monitoring the most
shooting around him and Anthony Davis, as you think that LeBron is a guy that wants those driving lanes. Anthony Davis operates down there. How does Brody fit in there, and how did this come about?
It's an interesting fit because you're right. You typically, because LeBron and Anthony Davis draw so much attention defensively, you need shooting around him. We know that's not what Russ is, but listen, Russ is as unique of a player that we've seen in this generation. He plays the game in a way that's kind of goes against the grain of in this modern age, and he had a fantastic season with the Wizards last year and brought them back with Bradley Beal and got them into the postseason. And he brings a ferocity to that team, to that city. He obviously played at UCLA. He's from Southern California. He really wanted this. He wanted this to happen. And I think when, the chance to go, not just go home, but go play for a championship contender, I think that Washington team, they're going to continue building around Bradley Beal. And
but does Bradley Beal want to build around Bradley Beal?
He does.
Is he frustrated?
He does. No, because listen, Bradley Beal had a chance to tell them, listen, I've got a year left on my contract, and why don't you guys start looking for a trade for me? I can leave next year. That's not what he told the Wizards.
Okay.
And so now, you take back the package from LA. Not a lot of great value, and I still think Kyle Kuzma can be a good player.
LeBron drove him to the airport.
Yeah.
Just be honest.
Listen,
like, see you later.
Yeah, and I think for the Wizards now, because Russ's contract is so enormous, it gives you some flexibility now financially. I think next season to go out and try to find a co-star in free agency for Bradley Beal. But, that Supermax is going to be there for him to sign. And I think you're going to see more and more players sort of look at it as, instead of leaving in free agency and taking less money to go somewhere else, sign the Supermax contract. Sign that you can get paid more, of course, by your own team. And as you've seen in this league, if you want to be traded, even if you have multiple years left on your contract, typically you get the trade you want. It's almost like being in the transfer portal anymore. You don't have to be a free agent. So I think Bradley Beal, Washington, they try to keep moving forward, but this is going to be fascinating to watch Russ in L.A. With LeBron, Anthony Davis, and this group.
I mean, you talk about that massive contract. What flexibility does this give the Lakers financially to be able to put something around the three? Because we saw that Anthony Davis can't stay healthy, right? And throughout his career, we know that he's battled injuries. LeBron is getting older, and the Brody is old too. So, like, how can they fill this roster around? And also, two-part question, does now the pressure to win a championship fall on Westbrook more or still on James Harden?
Well, let's start with that Laker roster first. Taylor Horton-Tucker is their own restricted free agent. I think you'll see them, find a way to get a deal done with him. He's going to play a bigger role on this team. But outside of Marc Gasol, he's the only other real, rotation player that's under contract. And so you are limited financially to who you can bring in, what you can pay him. You're going to, I think there's a $6 million mid-level exception and then a bunch of minimum deals. And you have to hope, that players who get out in the marketplace, and maybe that guy who thought he was a 5, 6, 7, 8, $9 million a year guy doesn't get that. And then it's, do I go to the Lakers for a minimum? Do I go on a one-year deal to try to win a championship, try to improve my value, go play with this group? But you're right, they're going to need shooting around that group. I think every team in the league who has star power like LeBron, AD, Westbrook, everybody is chasing down those shooters. This is a league where, certainly the role players have to make shots because star players gather so much attention defensively. But it's going to be a challenge for the Lakers to do that, to rebuild this roster. And you have three, certainly Westbrook, LeBron, two older players, Anthony Davis, more in his prime, but he has missed games. And so when you have the risk of injuries and guys who may miss time, you've got to have depth. That's going to be a challenge for the Lakers now as they try to piece this roster together here in free agency.
Adrian Wojnarowski, ESPN Senior NBA Insider, joining us in studio here on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin. Bart Scott, Freddie Coleman on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Going to the second part of his question, who has more pressure now, has not won a championship involving those two former teammates, James Harden in Brooklyn and Russell Westbrook in Los Angeles?
Well, I think James Harden, because he's still an all-NBA player in his prime, I think there's a bigger burden on perhaps a James Harden than there is. Russell Westbrook's a clear number 3 in L.A. And listen, in Brooklyn, playing with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, I don't know. I think players of that caliber want to win championships. James Harden came to Brooklyn because he thought that was his best chance to do that. And obviously Russell Westbrook now getting a chance, to go to L.A. It's clearly the priority for both guys. And they're both going to have great opportunities at it. The one guy I left out with the Lakers, Dennis Schroeder, who is their point guard, who I think they had, hoped when they traded and brought him in from Oklahoma City a year ago that they were going to sign him to an extension this year. Now that I'm not sure that's going to be the case now for the Lakers. They can work on a sign and trade with Schroeder to a team that doesn't have salary cap space. A lot of teams in need of a point guard, and that might be something to bring them back a couple pieces and get them some depth to the roster.
Has the Philadelphia 76ers located the new phone number for Ben Simmons? Have they been able to track him down? I feel like it's Where's Waldo? And where are we at with that story? Is he going to be traded? I mean, we thought that maybe he can be a draft night trade, but how do you see that?
Our resident general manager, Ryan McDonough. Ryan, let's start there. We've got 3 future Hall of Famers on this roster and just 2